Hello and welcome to today's video where we're going to go over MSI Day 14, the series between Gen.G and BLG. I had BLG winning this 3-2, but Gen.G showed up in a big way, especially Canyon and Chovy. And then preview the rematch between G2 and T1 briefly at the end. So, Gen.G, BLG. Games 1 and 4, close. Games 2 and 3, Gen.G favored. Game 3 was an ugly game out of BLG. But going into this series, I thought to myself, these teams haven't played for a few days. This could be a sloppy series, and in my opinion, BLG kind of left a little bit on the table. Given the format and the double elim that it does, I mean, BLG got an opportunity to lose. If they can beat the winner of this series, then they could beat Gen.G, and Gen.G lost once, BLG lost once. But, it's 1-1 out of 2. I'm just trying to not talk too much about how much I hate double elim without a reset, but regardless, BLG go to loser bracket. So, game 1, top side of the rift at about 15 minutes, 3 games ending at 15 minutes when it comes to first turret falling. 1,800 gold lead for Keen and Canyon. So, quite a big diffy up there in that regard. However, when you look at the CS and you see that it's 17 for Canyon, so yeah, he's ahead. But 13 for Bin, that goes to show you, Gen.G were finding a way to get Keen some gold on the Twisted Fate. Passive helping him. In terms of plays, it was 2-2. Gen.G taking 4 of the 6 grubs, but BLG would take the Rift Herald. I didn't actually complete my stats on there, so we're going to be adding it together at the end. So they took the Rift Herald. They also took 4 Drakes. Not many. Now we're getting to the end here where the games are much more competitive, and now souls are being taken more often. Early on, I felt like games were ending before soul was coming up and being decided. And the last couple days, there have been more games that have went longer. This series having 2 games that went over 35 minutes, one over 40. I think the T1 series against TL also had a 40-minute game. Also, BLG struggling with the power play in this one. So they had 2 Barons in game 1, averaging about 1,100 gold. And throughout the entire 4-game set, they actually average negative 418 gold. It was a rough go of it with the Baron. Actually, Gen.G they gained more gold when BLG had Baron than vice versa. Just not great. But BLG find a way to win game 1. I mean, it was slow, and BLG won the team fights they needed to. And honestly, so Gen.G came into it with some weird ideas of how they wanted to play the game with the bot lane, especially. They were bringing back the double support item, and I know they were looking closely at that. Unfortunately, we don't get exact gold numbers because of the series being, the series, but also the tournament being in China. We don't get the nice stats easily. But, so Gen.G lose game 1. Game 2, a big diffy mid-jungle duo. So Chovy Canyon up 1,700 gold and 56 CS combined. I know my Discord was insinuating that Knight got turbo gapped by Chovy. Personally, I don't look at the total game stats, flame horizons, things like that. I could really care less about the 1v1 matchup when that happens, because it's unlikely that the entire game they're actually 1v1 in the side lane and in the anywhere, right? Whereas in the laning phase, this lane swap meta doesn't help things, but most of the time they're actually against the opponent that they're against, so they're actually fighting over CS 1v1 or having to respect the jungler. So Chovy being ahead 20 at 15 minutes is significant. Canyon being ahead 36 on the Nidalee. So he played Nidalee in games 2 and 3. Very effective on the champion. One of his best champions when you look at win rate going into this series. It's funny because Shun's Nidalee I thought was like a pocket pick along with the Kindred. The win rate doesn't suggest that. It was below 50. I wanted to look at it by comparison, and it's pretty ugly. Game 2, Gen.G secure the bulk of the grubs, 5, and the Rift Herald. 3 Drakes to 1, and took a Baron, 2,200 gold. So that's solid. Elk and On, 34 CS lead in game 2. But because of the kills by Gen.G, the Senna bot lane was able to actually have a 700 gold lead. So that was good for them. Bin was ahead of Keen, 900 gold himself, so do give him credit, and 11 CS. Both teams would go top once and bot twice. So the first two games, Shun and Canyon, relatively even in terms of making plays, or at least the teams respectively. I do know, if I recall correctly, there is a situation where Chovy did initiate a play in Rome, and then Knight responded. That might be game. No, you know what? I think that was game 2 because BLG went top lane. So that's a thing. Been solid into Keen in this series. Bin actually solo killed Chovy in game 4. So Bin was definitely the best player for BLG in this series. Shun, the worst. I think Knight was not nearly as bad as Shun was, in particular in game 3. So in game 3, Gen.G, in my opinion, made 8 plays. 5 to mid, 3 to bot lane, where BLG really only created an outnumbered situation once. And it's just something to add. Game 2 really turned on a bad bot lane dive by BLG. That was actually probably something I should have said early on. But game 3, 8-1 in plays, like a big difference. Canyon very active, Gen.G very active, and BLG just could not keep up. And shoot, I mean, they split grubs, but took all 4 drakes, right? So they're in a good spot to take Soul. But something to think about here, BLG were able to win a fight to get Baron. And at this point, it's like, okay, maybe they can turn it. But the diffy between the teams, even after that Baron take, was so like insurmountable that Gen.G actually came out ahead of that Baron, 3,300 gold. When you take into account the 1525 that you get base. So technically, I mean, I guess they gained 1,800 gold, and BLG still get 1,500 gold either way. But when you do the math and you make that 1,500 go away, like BLG literally had 3,300 gold less. Like they were behind 3,300 more gold compared to Gen.G than before they took the Baron. Like it was a big blunder by BLG, and then Gen.G end up closing that game out. Laning phase was the only game that was 17 minutes. Massive difference for Pays Lahens into Elkon, up 3.4k gold, 20 CS, and that was the game where Elkon would try the Senna TK themselves, give Pays the Callista, and I mean, Gen.G went bot lane a lot, so you do have to give Canyon a lot of that credit, and Canyon was the MVP of this series, but Elkon struggled in this one by comparison to Pays and Lahens. Going into this one, you give Elk the edge. Elk has played excellent this entire season, where Pays left a lot to be desired for what would be the majority of the season. I don't think that there's anybody really going to make a claim that that wasn't the case. And Elk ended up struggling today, and Pays didn't, and in part due to Canyon. And last year, you think about it, Gen.G did go bot lane a lot. Peanut kind of helping Pays come along. As well as Delight. A lot of people, singing Delight's praises, but before that, Delight was also relatively, he was nowhere near as good as what he ended up being, in the eyes of viewers, in my opinion. Like going into that one, like Gen.G replacing Lahens with Delight. Delight was from Breon. It was like, oh shit, like this could be ugly for Gen.G. I think I had them 4th in spring because of the bot lane being what I would consider to be a massive question mark. But Peanut kept going bot lane, and Chovy became a roaming mid and playing more facilitator. Top lane Doran took on, and I don't want to talk about Gen.G 2023 that much. This is the 2024 roster. But with Canyon going bot lane, it reminded me of that. And Gen.G were better than doing that when it came helping Pays than what they'd been doing this year in regards to Canyon facilitating mid and top lane more than bot lane. So, a 3.4k gold lead, 58 CS. Mid lane was relatively even. That's the thing. So, there were games 2 and 4. Knight was gapped by Chovy in laning phase. But 1 and 3, not the case. So, over 4 games? We have 300 for Chovy, 200 for Chovy, 1,000 for Chovy. I mean, a 333 gold lead, roughly. Just quick math here, 715. Yeah, like that's not that much. It's not gapping him. I mean, you can look at stats at the end of the game, but a lot transpired between what the 1v1 was versus what the game ended up being at the end. And Canyon was up 1.1k gold despite the CS being even in game 3. I think it was Nidalee into Diana, possibly for yes, because Sejuani for both games for Shun in games 1 and 2. The Diana was ugly. Something though to think about. BLG kind of scrimming a bit here, right? Pulling out some picks, the Diana, the Vex, and maybe they're looking at it as, hey, we need to get more games, we need to try these things now instead of going into finals with them and then losing when it really truly matters. Not to say that they should be overlooking these teams, because they should not be at this stage, but at the same time, they do not have a lot of stage games to try things out thus far. Game 4, very close, slow game. So Gen.G not really getting much going in the laning phase, in my opinion, as far as outnumbered situations are concerned that really seemed like they could cause something to happen. Where BLG made a play in each lane, took 5 grubs, but Gen.G were able to secure the 3rd Drake, and that's where the game shifted. So at 15 minutes, laning phase ended, top lane pretty much even. Shona had 700 gold, but Chovia had 800 gold and 26 CS on the Corki. And as the team fights started to occur in the mid to late game, he was a menace. Raining down damage, BLG had no answer for it. They tried to take him out of the team fights, and when they did, there were still moments that weren't great. So I don't remember if it was the 3rd or the 4th fight, but it was like Chovy was not to be seen, and it was just Canyon on a Maokai with like 1/3 health against 3 BLG players that weren't full health either. But it's you don't know where Chovy is, and Canyon's the only one showing it. And it actually caused BLG to back off and give Drake, and that's probably where they started losing the game, in my opinion. They allowed Gen.G to extend the game, and as Gen.G extended the game, it just became too much for BLG to handle. And in the end, I mean, both teams got a Baron, but BLG ended up negative 400 gold once again on the Baron. Gen.G, when they took theirs, 2368. And this game was the long one. It was 43 minutes, 6 Drakes. That's going to happen. Gen.G getting Chemtech Soul and it working for them. In terms of total plays, so we're going to have to do the math for BLG here, but 13 plays by Gen.G, 11 of them to the bot side of the Rift and mid lane combined. BLG, what do we have here? 1, 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. So 2, 3, 4, 9 plays. So 13 to 9 in favor of Gen.G. In terms of Grubs and Herald, 13 and 1 for Gen.G. BLG 3-1, 6-2, and 11-3. So BLG getting 3 of 4 Rift Heralds, but losing the series 3-1. So something to kind of think about. Rift Herald and its priority, whether it leads to wins or losses. Drakes, 12 for Gen.G, 5, 7 for BLG. That's a big difference maker, right? Gen.G clearly emphasizing Soul, and they got Soul in both games 3 and 4. Power plays, Gen.G averaging 2,300 gold over 2 Barons, and coming out ahead on average 400 gold over 4 Barons that BLG had. So it is really something, because BLG got more Barons, they got more Rift Heralds on the top side of the Rift. Gen.G get the majority of the Drakes, they get the majority of the Souls, and yet that's what the difference. Gen.G end up winning the series decisively. And you could say, well, that shit didn't really matter. It's like, well, when you look at it over a large sample size, maybe we can draw some conclusions from that. So stats: Chovy 15, 7, 29, 30% of damage in the win. Canyon 13, 7, 38 in the jungle. Elk 15, 13, 18, 28% of damage in the loss. Preview for tomorrow, G2T1. So on the board here, I have the player that was ahead in their matchup in the 5-game series last time. I include these laning stats here. Well, I did the math, and this is rough math because we don't have the exact numbers, and this is based on when first turret fell. Broken Blade on average ahead of Zeus 360 gold, 7 CS. Owner ahead of Yike, just 280 gold. Caps ahead 380 gold, 10 CS over Faker. And then Gumacaria ahead 80 gold, 5 CS on average against Hansama Mickey X. So really those, I mean, nobody's really gapping each other. I mean, under 400 gold total. So how much is that really worth at what could be anywhere between, I mean, we're seeing most games run in the 14 to 15 minute range in terms of laning phase, which is normally the number we look at, right? CSD 14, CSD 15, and the like. Now, on here we have the bans. So most banned by the team as well as against the team. In top lane, the 3 champions that we have here are Rumble, Zac, and Twisted Fate. The only champion that crosses both teams is Rumble. And this is probably in part due to the fact that these teams did play 5 games against each other. So T1 not getting an opportunity to really play Rumble, and G2 banning Rumble. G2 also facing a lot of Zac and Twisted Fate. Zac bans, and T1 facing Twisted Fate bans. In the jungle, we have 4 champions. So, against G2, they face a lot of Rek'Sai bans, as well as Poppy. But do keep in mind, Poppy is a triple flex for them. And then Vi, Sejuani, 2 champions that tend to be banned by T1. So, we'll see if they end up banning them tomorrow due to the, wide champion pool that G2 have. Mid lane, 3 champions, Azir, Orianna. Both teams having them in their drafts. Like I said, probably because they played against each other. So, G2 tend to ban Azir. T1 don't get to play a lot of Azir. And T1 also face a lot of Orianna bans as well as G2. So, we might not, will they leave Orianna up because both sides can now play it? Neither one really felt like banning it. Or was it a case of, you know what, the other teams are banning these before we can. Maybe it's a first 3 ban or whatever. 80 carry, 3 champions. And that's something, huh? 3. I was going to say, actually, all the roles here have 3, except jungle. So jungle is the most common ban on this board. But regardless, Senna, Lucian, Draven, all 3 champions in both teams' drafts, whether it's against or by them. Senna and Lucian banned by G2. G2 also facing Draven bans. T1 banning Draven themselves, banning Lucian themselves, and facing a lot of Senna bans. Support, Ashe banned by G2. T1 don't get to play a lot of Ashe. Nautilus banned by G2. Banned by T1. Therefore, G2 couldn't really play it either at this tournament, probably because T1 were banning it against G2. Renata, banned by G2. T1 don't really face a lot of Renata bans and don't really put many out themselves. So, a lot of overlap here in the bans, and like I said, that's probably because they played each other. That's like the 4th time I've said that, so I think that should explain it. Now, this matchup, like I said, I don't know if I said in my prediction video yesterday, or this morning, or yesterday, towards the middle to end of the video. In regards to G2, G2 are now showing what I liked in 2023, which is why I had this roster in 2024 not rated as highly as I did in 2023, in my opinion. If you've watched my channel a long time, and many of you, especially many of the European fans that have come in over the last month, have no clue what I am talking about. And so I'm going to go over it. Last year, G2, in my opinion, played a lot of champions in winter and spring splits. I think we all could agree we saw a wide range of champions. The Kled is a great example of something that we saw that really only they played. Sejuani mid, and just some wild and crazy shit. And I like when teams do that. I think that is the way that a Western team can compete against an Eastern team. That's how a minor region team can compete against major region teams. I talk about Vietnam a lot in this way as well. So, this year, personally, I felt like G2 lost a lot of that domestically. Going into this event, they were not the most diverse team when it came to champion pool, unlike last year. And if you don't have a wide champion pool, personally, I don't think you have that surprise factor and that X factor that makes up for hands diff. People don't like when I talk about hands diff because for some reason they think I shouldn't be saying that, that Eastern regions have better players mechanically, but there is a reason why there aren't Western players playing in Eastern regions, but Eastern players playing Western regions, right? I think that's self-explanatory. So, the fact of the matter is, now G2 have this Poppy pick. They have some interesting picks that they really didn't show a lot of this year. But Poppy in particular is an interesting one that is a triple flex that nobody else really has. It's reminiscent of maybe even Pike when G2 were successful, which is in part why I think the way I do about teams having to have X Factor picks to succeed at an international event when, in my opinion, they are the best players mechanically. So, when you have this Poppy pick, that's a big deal. When you have all these picks, it's a big deal. Now you're hard to scout, hard to prepare for. Now, at this point, T1 should have something at least in mind to match it. Whether it works or not, because you only had a couple days, is a thing. But you need to have something to attempt to stop it. It's inexcusable to not have it. And, people might want to mention, oh, look how good the Ivern did for G2. Top Esports should have expected Ivern because they've played Ivern the last 2 years 6 times. And it's one of Yike's best champions statistically. He played it twice this year. So it's not like it's something that he never plays. You should have in the back of your mind, especially when there's a double ADC meta. You're seeing Tristana mid. Ivern makes a lot of sense. So when you see stuff like that, it's just like one of those things. Like people are like, oh yeah, look at the Ivern. It's a crazy pick. People, no one's playing Ivern. It's like G2 were playing Ivern, so you should have known G2 were playing Ivern. But Poppy support really wasn't a thing. I don't believe. And it's something. Hell, think about Mickey's Lysandra last year as well. That didn't go over quite as well as this Poppy is. But picks that surprise, when you do things the other team doesn't expect, you have a better chance. And I say that, I've been saying that for years now. So that's kind of the spiel here. So G2 at these picks can be competitive into Eastern teams and T1 because they have them. That's the thing. So now that we've played more than 10, 12, people are talking about 5, 6 games. I should have an opinion about G2. We need to stop being so reactionary with teams and players. Like, people flip a switch, one series, oh, this team sucks, or one series, this team's gonna win Worlds, this team's gonna win MSI, or this player needs to be benched, this player needs to go down to ERLs, this player needs to be brought up, and this or that, and it's like, it's so knee-jerk and reactionary, kind of just shows like, okay, you really you're not even really thinking about it, you're just going with your emotion and how you feel about the situation. So after watching, several games and G2 now showing what they showed last year, they have a chance tomorrow, for sure. Now, in my opinion, Zeus is much better than Broken Blade mechanically. So that's the thing. Owner into Yike. Owner has to be mind controlled by Faker. Caps into Faker. I think I might have had Caps ranked higher than Faker going into this event. Might have had him third and Faker fourth. So if that ends up being the case, again, if that was, I might have been vice versa. You can check the mid lane video if you want. But, depending on how that goes, it is what it is. They're closely matched. And then the bot lane, in my opinion, Guma Keria are better mechanically. Keria is the player that should have a pick against Poppy prepared. This is where Keria shines in terms of, status, in my opinion, his champion pool. So he needs to have something for this. And it's a matter of, oh, yeah, well, he didn't have it in the T1 series or, the series when they played or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, he's had 2 days to figure it out. The X factor, the surprise factor is a thing. So, Yeah, so that's it for the video. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel for daily League of Legends content. Follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, become a YouTube supporter, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.